Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Said Differently. I am your host, Jennifer Sikora, on behalf of Troupe, who brings you this program focused on the art and the science of bringing your go-to-market story to life, all things messaging, all things positioning. And the topic today is a really great one because this has come up a lot in our recent episodes with other guests, which is how AI is making it faster and easier to build and launch new features faster and easier in the market, which is making it challenging for product marketers and marketing leaders to manage a coherent story. Sales is off chasing the last new feature and trying to figure out messaging around it. So we're going to really be focused on that topic today. And I have two amazing panelists as far as today's episode. Tamara Grominsky, I hope I did not butcher your name, Tamara, and Michele Nieberding, both who we've met through the Product Marketing Alliance. Really excited to have them both here, lending their perspective on this topic that they both equally feel pretty passionately about. So I'll let you each introduce yourself. Tamara, will you please start?
Yeah, no problem. So I currently run a company called PMM Camp, which is a community and education company for product marketing leaders, where we talk about topics just like this. You know, I found that at one point in your kind of stage as a product marketer, it's really about learning from each other rather than learning about a particular individual. And so that's what I do. But before that, I was a product marketing leader for 15 years, mostly in the PLG space. So I think we'll have an interesting discussion today about even some of the nuances between sales-led versus PLG and how that impacts today's topic.
I love that. That's a great way to, that didn't even occur to me. So I'm glad that we're going to be bringing that. Michele.
Yeah, I love it. I'm not part of the PLG world, so I think, like you said, that'll be really interesting to chat about. But I am a part of PMM Camp, and I can say that I love it. So big fan. But hi, yes, I'm Michele Nieberding. I'm the head of product marketing at a startup called Optiversal, and we do AI search for retail companies to get them found with all the craziness that's happening with how search is changing, which is super fun and interesting and scary at the same time, maybe. We'll talk about it, I'm sure. I'm like, I just don't want an agent buying everything on my behalf, but there we go.
Yeah, that's going to be wild if that day comes. God, heavens knows what they'll end up ordering from me. But the two of you know each other as well, right?
Yeah, we're besties.
And I didn't really plan it that way. It just kind of worked out that way for this episode.
I love it. Simpatico. I think you asked us both what we wanted to talk about. We said the same topic and we're like, let's just all get on a call.
You absolutely did. I'm like, well, let's just consolidate this. This is great. Okay. So great. We're going to have three voices on this conversation. So let me just kind of kick this off here. So we've all lived in the pre-AI world, and now AI with, Cursor, Claude Code, all the co-piloting tools, it is now accelerating product development and releases. I experience it every day as an active advisor for Troupe. I'm on the Slack channel. I see what engineering is posting with their PRs, and they're like, here we go. This is shipped. And it's like multiple times a week. And some of it is little small stuff that doesn't warrant messaging, but other things are like, wow, you shipped that already? That's amazing. So how have you guys experienced this firsthand in your roles? Maybe give some specific examples of where you're seeing this. How does this come up in your work or with the interactions you have with other peers? Michele, start with you.
I mean, like you said, it happens all the time, and it's so cool. And it's like you want to show off like your newborn child and how great the I don't know it is, and you're like, wait a second, what are we doing here? It's funny because I try to explain to my mom like what I do, and I was talking to her about this topic, and my mom doesn't know what I do. She's like, it's AI, whatever. That's about the extent of her knowledge.
Yeah, same.
I'm like, imagine pick like your favorite TV show. Say, I don't know, Great British Baking Show, one of my favorites. Imagine a new episode is coming out every single week, and so you're planning to see it on that day of that week, and that's like where your headspace goes. Now imagine every single day you had a new update. Oh, this contestant made this or did that, or there was this like updates every single day. And you're like, no, I'm mentally prepared for the next episode next week. I'm not trying to hear, new little updates happening every day about my favorite TV show or spoilers or whatever. And it's kind of what it feels like right now. Like, it's too much noise for customers to understand what is actually happening or what's impactful, or prospects to even know what you're doing. So I think what's happening now is, yes, it's really cool that we can ship things more quickly. In fact, that part of it is probably a dream, because we lived in the world where we're like waiting for the things that we've been promised from a product marketing perspective actually be built. So like that's what pendulum swinging back. But this is also when I think two things become truly important. One is the story, which has always been the case, but even more so now. And then two is stakeholder management. When the team gets so excited about building these things, and of course they want to show it off, and we do too, but you have to manage the expectations with them. Just because you built it doesn't mean we're going to do a whole big launch around it at this point in time. And that kind of pressure of, okay, well, we're building more and more and more in the next couple of weeks has become stronger. So I think product marketing, the role has become even more important, again, to tell the right story and to really hone in on what that stakeholder management looks like.
Couldn't agree more. And we, at Troupe, of course, we embrace that, because that's where we're solidly playing in. But Tamara, what are you seeing with the camps that you run and hearing from other people?
First of all, I love the metaphor, Michelle. I feel like we're living in like a Love Island style where, there's new episodes every night. Yeah, just to keep the metaphor going. But so I
love the female voices, by the way, our choices of reference points here. So.
Right? So I think I talk to at least 10 PMM leaders one-on-one a week. And so what the value I have is I can actually see breadth in addition to my own consulting work that I do within companies. And so I think maybe highlighting some of that breadth might be helpful here. Yeah. I'll also add, I kind of see two ends of the spectrum. So I think what we're talking about today is the reality for a lot of product marketers. But what I'm also hearing is that it's not the reality for a lot of other product marketers where, they would expect their teams to be moving faster. They're seeing on LinkedIn and in private chats that other people are seeing this, and they almost have some FOMO of like, oh, well, why isn't my team moving faster? Why aren't we shipping? And so I just want to recognize for anyone who's listening, like if that is you, you are not alone. Both scenarios can be equally true, and everyone's kind of living in different realities right now. But with that said, I completely agree with everything that Michelle just said. And I think for me, I've been thinking a lot and speaking to PMMs a lot about how does this change our relationship with our customers? So Michelle, you kind of teased it a little bit, like as humans, we cannot absorb this much information. And I think we have been used to in the past us pushing information out to our customers, whether that's through like monthly release notes or big launches. And I think the conversation needs to start to shift into how do we let customers self-serve the information they need at the time that they need it? Because some people do want to binge Love Island every single night, and other people just want to watch a 12-episode show once per week and get that like higher quality content. And it's almost like, how do we create both of those experiences and then let customers choose the experience that is right for them?
That's awesome. And we're definitely going to dig in on the planned questions I have for this episode. We have a focus question around how the users or the end consumers of those updates are going to absorb all of that. But you brought up a really great point, which is the other end of the spectrum, Tamara, which is, okay, you have the people who are handling rapid release cycles, but then you have those who are not only getting the FOMO feeling, but also like, how do they message in the absence of that pace when their competitors or other players in their space might be doing that? So there's that tension as well. Like, it's one thing to feel the FOMO internally, but it's another to try to figure out how to position that in the market if your company's not shipping, and maybe they're deliberately not shipping. Maybe they're moving code quickly, but they're still holding it back before they're pushing it live, right? And so there's a lot going on there.
One thing I would also add is that we're product marketers who work at tech companies. We are a part of a bubble where we are talking about things and experiencing things that the average consumer, even a business consumer, is not. So I'll give an example.
Yeah.
QuickBooks, which is an accounting software. I use QuickBooks and my dad uses QuickBooks. He has a small business. I have a small business. My dad is not sitting around thinking, wow, why with AI is QuickBooks not shipping features faster? I'm starting to lose trust in QuickBooks. They're not innovative enough. He's not thinking that at all. Right. Meanwhile, it could be me as a product marketer. I'm like, QuickBooks does feel a little outdated, And so I think we have to, as product marketers, also try to be as responsible as possible of thinking about who are actual customers, what are their expectations, and then to your point, Michele, how do we manage those expectations accordingly?
That's really great. I love it. Okay, so let's dive into the first kind of more planned question. So product launches, we've all been through it, right? There is this sort of, we build these frameworks, these structures, these plans. And so that's been around forever. And we've always kind of thought about how to grade a product launch, or like, is this a major? Is it medium? Is it low? Because then that helps determine how big of a splash you make, what resources you pull in, how big of the scope is the launch plan that you need to manage end to end. But now with all of this stuff shipping more frequently, how are we redefining what we consider a launch plan? Michele, let's start with you.
I mean, it's not just like shipping more stuff. It's like there's more places to ship it, if that makes sense. Like the number, ClickUp's done a great job on like TikTok, from a corporate perspective. Like there's just so many, Reddit.
Oh, to communicate.
To talk about the things that we're shipping. So there's, again, in my world, which is, interesting to think about, because tomorrow, you're so right. Like the past company I was at, my CEO was literally building things, shipping things, being like, okay, product marketing, go enable. I'm like, I don't even know what you built. And this kept, or like companies that are rebranding to whatever company name AI. And they're like, oh, well, that's our launch. It's just, we've rebranded to something AI and that's going to fix all of our problems. So it's not even a product, right? It's just like fully rebrand because everyone else is doing it. So there's all these things going on. There's all these new ways to communicate it, channels to communicate it on. But I think what changes is like it's not just waiting 3 months to launch something, right? I feel like historically product marketing was, okay, you build that 3-month plan, like you get 3 months to build your product. We have 3 months to like get all the things together to talk about it. Like last week I was building landing pages on Lovable because, my CEO broke his arm and can't build out the website right now, things like that. Like there's ways to ship things faster, but I think the way we need to think about launches differently is not just like, did we ship something, or are we building something? It's like, how does this change how like the buyer, the customer, the market should think about it, right? Because when everything is, this is my new favorite word, sloptimized. AI sloptimized. I know, right? It's like kind of fun. But
did you make that up?
Unfortunately, not take credit for it. I saw it in some LinkedIn post. I'm like, that's genius.
It's a good portmanteau for sure.
Like, I need t-shirts. But that's kind of, if you're not doing it right, if you're like using AI ready and like all these buzzwords and you're just like literally slapping AI on something, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. And so when we're thinking about how we're redefining launches, you have to keep, like, I think the criteria of what, like, why are you launching it? What is the narrative? The story becomes, like I said, 10 times more important, because like you'll have cases where you're telling a really, really strong story and you have a set of features that tell that story really well. And then someone launches something that they think is like tier one, like the coolest thing in the world. And you're like, but that does not fit into the narrative that we're about to tell and why we're telling it. So even though it's calming the chaos, you just have a couple more cats to herd within what you're doing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because we think about how like we've traditionally tiered launches. There's many different ways of doing it, but oftentimes the conversation comes back to what is the level of customer value that we're delivering with this launch, and what is the level of business value. If we have high customer value and high business value, we're going to make it a tier one. I think we need to start over-indexing on the customer value right now, right? Because when we feel like we're constantly shipping things that could be valuable, oftentimes we are doing those things for us. We're like, oh, well, we're getting a lot of churn because of this thing. We want to ship this out, right? And it's like, well, maybe that is valuable to the customer, but like is it, or are we building it for ourselves? And so it's like, what is the customer narrative that we want to tell over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months? Maybe that narrative is now a bit tighter than it used to be. We're not thinking in 3-year increments, but we certainly should still be thinking about the next 12 months. And are we shipping something that allows us to actually move that story forward for the customer? And when is it enough? I think one little thing could be valuable and it could help move the story forward. But to go back to like the serialized kind of TV show example, I often like to think of like serialized novels as well. It's like, okay, some novels came out chapter by chapter, but they didn't come out sentence by sentence. You know what I mean? They waited until there was enough sentences to move the story forward, to package it into a chapter, but it had the plot to it, right?
Oh my God, I love it. I just envisioned a teaser for this episode here. So, okay, good.
Amazing. And so I've been thinking a lot about that. I'm like a big reader. I did my master's in publishing. And so I go back to books a lot. And it's like, how do we start packaging chapters rather than sentences and paragraphs? But also, we don't want to wait till the end of the novel either. So I think that's a fun metaphor we could maybe play with.
It really is. I also had a recent episode of Said Differently with Tom Chris. Do you guys know him? He's with Fluvio Marketing. He's a big part of the Product Marketing Alliance. He hosts a lot of their events. He and the Fluvio team, they published a report about how product marketing can close the revenue gap. And he made a really good point that I think actually fits in well with his theme, which is that product marketers need to shift left. And sometimes that's been really hard. But if product marketers can get ahead and get more strategic visibility and have a greater voice in actually what is being planned, even with that accelerant of AI poured on top of it, then you can anticipate what's coming down the road with the plot line, right? So now you can you can be proactive about thinking about your communication as opposed to reactive, which unfortunately I think a lot of product marketers find themselves in a reactive state, right? Somebody else makes the decision about what is getting developed in the product, and now it's product marketing's job to carry that water to the market. But his argument is shifting left. What do you both think of that? Do you see an opportunity, an opening here from product marketing to get more strategic?
I mean,
yeah. So I call that inbound. So there's like inbound product marketing and outbound. I think I've always advocated for people to build that inbound muscle, but I'll also add typically, historically, when we talk about inbound product marketing, we say, oh, we should bring insights to the product team to help them influence what they build. But to bring us back to the book metaphor, what if product marketers were not the authors, but the editors, right? The product manager is responsible for figuring out what are we building. It is our responsibility to make sure, yes, we're helping them like build the right things, but more importantly, build them in the right order so we can tell the right story. So if you think about an editor, we're looking at the raw ingredients that are on the page and we're saying, wouldn't it be really great if we moved these couple paragraphs up into chapter 2 instead of chapter 5? That creates more tension, that creates more excitement, that, satisfies the reader, whatever it might be. I really think that that is our role within the inbound part of the product marketing world.
Yeah.
I don't know, Michelle, what do you think?
I mean, I think to build on that, and I've actually had to use this story recently for a similar situation where there was pressure to push things too quickly. And you're right, like, where is it fitting into the story? And the analogy I used, so I guess I'll ask you both, what's your favorite animated movie? Pick anything.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna go old school here and go with the OG Aladdin.
Yeah, gosh, I can't say I've watched a lot of animated movies.
I feel like I just exposed you. Okay, books is the okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, books over movies.
I also like Beavis and Butthead Do America, but I don't know what that says about me. So I guess I just admitted that, but that's okay.
I mean, we'll take it.
Anyway.
I mean, okay, so like Aladdin, whatever, Beavis and Butthead, whatever. All animated movies have this in common, right? Where they get the story right before they build out the animations. And because of that, it takes less time to build. It's cheaper to build versus, say, something like a live action show, say Mission Impossible, where they record hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage and pay so much money to the actors to do this. And then they slim it down to like an hour and a half that you're watching in a movie theater for hours and hours of content that's been built. So to Tamara's point, like, you want to start like an animated movie, you have to get the story right first and then build everything after that to make a good movie. There's really no bad animated movies. Why? they got the plot right first. They got the story right first. They knew, to Tamara, to your point, like what fit where, what chapters they were building and where to put things in, which is why it's been so powerful and so impressive, like what animated movies have been able to do. What are the new ones about, like emotions, or what, like there's all really good new ones that have taken off. And then you see, I don't know, maybe some live action films that either aren't the best, or you like, I don't know, Scary Movie 6 came out. I'm a millennial, I can't help it. And they were like talking about all of these parts of the movie that were cut, and you're like, oh, you know, what a waste of money and time for things that are just getting cut out of a movie. And so I think, you know, that goes back to the point, is like, you've got, be an animated movie, right? Get the story right first and then ship it and tell that good story, because otherwise it won't stick, it won't make sense back to the customer. Like, again, yeah, are we shipping things to ship things? That's really the question.
Great. No, all right. So let's stick with the customer lens on this. So how are they going to absorb? You gave the analogy, Tamara, already about the QuickBooks between you and your dad, but I mean, the communication strategy to your prospects. I think we're all on the receiving end. We all use many different tools to do our jobs, right? And we're constantly getting fed different updates, or you go in and there's something changed, there's something different. Most of it, I think we can absorb, but if it's at such a high pace, or it's a jarring change and that's happening fairly often, that gets really difficult for users to absorb. So users are one group, but then there's the non-users who you hope one day will be users. And how do you get them? So I feel like that you can almost even segment it further, right? There's the people who are already in your product, who are using it, and they have to absorb the change. That's more of a customer success, customer training kind of issue, but there's a story there too. And then there's the prospects who are like, well, how am I making sense of, maybe I should just wait 2 more months before buying your product, right? Because if you're shipping so much, then why don't I wait till there's some more good stuff in there, right? So you don't want to also give them cause to delay a decision. How do we get our arms around this, the customer comms part? Or the prospect comms part?
Yeah, I think obviously there has to be some consistency. So if we go back to, you know, the TV show analogy, right? People that don't watch Love Island, I didn't watch it for a while. How do you get, because we're all fighting for the same dollars, the same attention, right? So how do you get someone who, I don't know, prefers watching The Bachelor over Love Island or whatever, like, to get them to watch Love Island, right? It's like that similar concept, and you have to keep that consistency of like, what do you stand for? What is your true narrative from a high level? Like, what are you doing to solve people's problems? Now, you might be doing something a little differently or solving a slightly different problem, but from like a umbrella narrative, that should be consistent and remain the same. I joked with my husband, like, durability is so important. Like, if you can compliment somebody, durability is actually up there with one of those top, you know, things that people maybe don't think about. And I think when the idea of like message durability is so important, because it takes a step beyond consistency. Are you saying the same thing? Sure. But does that message continue to resonate as the market changes, as things change, as customer ways of buying changes? Tamara, to your point, like, does that message still remain the same? And you think of brands that have done this really well. I don't know, Slack, for example, I think it started as like a way to interact for video gamers or something. Like, Slack was not always meant to be a corporate messaging platform, but it was so good at what they did, this idea of like, we're good at communicating, you know, helping people communicate and message each other, that they were able to build upon that core durable narrative in a way that really expanded them into like corporate necessity. Everyone must have Slack, right? So that message remains the same. You're really good at the core of what you do, and everyone knows that, to then eventually say, okay, when I'm looking for a tool to do X, I think of Y. And that's really what I think we're working towards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts here. Not sure where to take this first. I think there was a couple questions. It was like, how do we message to both prospects and then also existing customers? Equally, how do we message an innovative, fast-changing product when maybe people want stability? I'll take that last one first. So I do think that being honest with the prospect and the market about like where you are in your journey as a product is the best course of action. How I see a lot of people handle this well is something like a manifesto that paints, you know, the picture of what you believe in, to your point, Michelle, those like durable values, that direction that's probably not going to change, the thing that you believe needs to be different. And, managing the expectation that this is not going to happen overnight. But if you believe in this too, and you want this better, different world, come along with us for the journey. And here's some of the benefits of being along for the journey. You get to help shape it. You get an inside track, whatever it might be. But then on the homepage, being really clear about like, this is what we do today. Here's the use cases we solve for the people whom we solve them. So I think that topic, but going back to the first topic, which is like, how does the messaging actually change between, messaging to a prospect versus messaging to a customer or a user now that we have, things coming out faster and faster? I think that's where like a messaging hierarchy comes in, which we often talk about messaging and positioning as like a very flat thing. We have messages and we have positioning. But I like to think of positioning as like the anchor or the foundation, and we can kind of go up or down. As we go up, we're going to more kind of cooler audiences, right? So people who are maybe, yes, prospects, mid-funnel, prospects, top of funnel, people who've never heard of us before. Yeah. And if we just went out, we can use QuickBooks as an example again. Like at the very top of the funnel, what are we talking about? We're probably talking about financial independence. We're talking about the power of entrepreneurship, about, building something for yourself. They're not talking about profit and loss sheets, right? But then when they're below kind of the middle of the funnel and they're at the bottom of the triangle in the messaging hierarchy, that's where they're going to talk about, all of the little features that are being shipped that are leveling up to specific story lines that they want to tell to their existing customers. So it's worth literally building one of those little, messaging triangles. At the top is like the prospect. It's like, what's your big, bold message? And at the bottom is like the use cases under each of your products. And then in the middle, it kind of gets filled up from there.
That's a really great way to look at it, I think. And, it kind of segues what you both were talking about is this concept of a North Star and the messaging durability, as you phrased it, Michelle, is and how the hierarchy unfolds underneath that North Star. I know, like, just as an example, at Troupe, we've been working with some of our early customers here on helping them understand how their messages are performing against their pipeline. So they all have messaging plans and we get that loaded up, and then they start tracking how those messages are actually getting articulated in the real world, which is interesting analysis in and of itself, and then how they're performing. And we have one customer, will not reveal who they are, but they have 3 core pillars to their messaging hierarchy. So they're like these 3 primary themes. And oddly, those themes are underperforming compared to their average, conversion rate and their average win rate. So when those messages are present, they're actually seeing a decrease in those rates. So that's where you have to really kind of have the metrics to also challenge this, which is, okay, let's not just assume that our North Star story, our big hierarchy actually is correct either, because as we are articulating these messages in the market, we want to kind of use those inputs to reshape it, not just simply the product velocity that's happening. Like, how do we come up and iterate and refresh the story, not just simply based on what's shipping now, but also what's working? So what do you guys think of that aspect to this, Tamara?
I think it's like an ongoing work. And I think it also depends on who your customer set is. So again, going back to the beginning of the call, I mostly have worked in PLG. And when I work with clients now, it's often in the PLG space. And we have the luxury of having data and very fast sales cycles or buying cycles. And so for me, that's always meant like, before we are ready for a tier 1 launch, we're testing every part of a landing page before we even get there. So we're testing on like our beta landing pages, different versions of headlines, subheads, order of those stories, all of those things, so that we can see, well, we know this one is going to perform better than this one. So I would say we have more of an advantage there. But I think if we just take like a more philosophical perspective on this, regardless of your go-to-market motion, what actually causes this? Half the time, it's because we have a set of executives who sit in a room who want to tell a story. And then we have another group of people who are actually, building the work, shipping the work, talking to customers, getting real-time feedback. And there isn't enough trust between the two groups for the executives to be willing to hear the feedback of the people on the ground. But also the people on the ground sometimes don't take enough initiative to make it impactful enough for the executives to find a way to communicate. And so I think it's about just having more of a spirit of innovation. It's like, okay, if you're as open to shipping new product this quickly, why can't we iterate on our story that quickly as well? And then just setting up the right rituals and rhythms of business to have that. So the same way we have product meetings, why can't we have story and narrative meetings?
That's
right.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And I mean, it's nice. We didn't really have metrics to test messaging before, right? I mean, to your point, an executive had an opinion and that was that. It didn't matter if we had tested it with customers, or now there's AI persona testing, which is a whole nother can of worms. I won't even go down that path. But it's this idea of you have to keep that North Star. And yes, we have to test what these pillars are. But in a world where I come from, where it's very sales led, very enterprise, takes a really long time. And if you mess up that story as you're working an enterprise deal that takes 12 or more months, that can get confusing and almost scary to the prospect. Be like, oh, you said you were this and now you're this. I mean, again, my last company, we really focused on IT and engineering. And almost overnight, we updated the whole website, launched a new product, went just after marketers. And our customers were like, are you still selling that thing you sold me? Are you still investing in the product that I have currently? That whiplash was very real. And it did come from the top down, which is a lot of pressure for product marketers to keep that North Star story. And then even the idea of testing pillars, you can't even do that in that moment, which is almost scary because to your point, you have to have that hierarchy. Now, within that hierarchy, how often those layers change is an interesting idea, right? Because if you have that top-down pressure, what do you do in that situation? How do you communicate? You do your best to say, here, we're not changing our identity, we're expanding on it, right? I used to tell people, if you think of the depths of the ocean, you don't necessarily know everything that lives down there. And just because a new species in the deep ocean pops up, it doesn't mean everything else in the ocean goes away, right? That's a hard story to tell. And scary when there's so many tools out there. I mean, there's hundreds of AI tools popping up overnight to solve the same problem, right? So it's I feel for our customers, and sometimes I'm a customer of our customers because they're dealing with so much noise, and there's, oh, this tool can do this now and this tool can do that now. So you really have to have some level of consistency, and thank goodness now that we do have tech to test the messaging, because previously as product marketers, it was kind of well, this is my best guess. I talk to customers, I'm getting feedback from sales, but I don't have the numbers to take up to the executives to say, hey, here's what's working and not working. Even if they have a strong opinion, it was kind of you can only do so much to share your feedback because you didn't have hard metrics other than, our churn is up or our conversion rate is lower, whatever that might be. The direct correlation wasn't there. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those metrics and that kind of data cannot just help with this sort of stagnation around messaging, but also mercurialness around messaging, right? And I think there's a risk here that with the amount of AI velocity for shipping more features is that we are refreshing too often. So you guys have both brought up really good arguments about how to strike that balance. Just kind of closing out with the last question, I did ask one of my many LLMs that I subscribe to its thoughts on this, and it gave a good reminder on how a long-standing framework still applies. So I'd like to get your thoughts. Its answer was, before communicating any launch, ask yourself, who needs to care? Is it for customer, prospects, technical debt, or a full market moment? Why does it matter now? So giving that release context, and how does this fit our larger story? I feel like the three of you hit on all of those during this discussion, but looking ahead, what kind of practical advice would you give product marketers or marketing leaders to ground themselves and kind of just, get some stability right now? Tamara?
Yeah. One thing I've been thinking a lot about recently is this idea of trust. I think that, pre AI, we went into most relationships with products and companies with trust, right? Until they broke it. And I think what AI has exposed is that now we actually enter most relationships with a lack of trust. And we then expect someone to build up that trust. It's like, I immediately assume that you've written this all with AI. I immediately assume you haven't given any thought. It's going to change all the time, all of those things, right? That's the mindset that a lot of people are going into. So I think, how do you make sure that you are building on trust with your customer with everything that you release? And so I think the extra question I would add to that framework is this building trust with our customers, or is this breaking trust with our customers? And just what would that look like? Well, if we've been talking about a narrative, a storyline, maybe a value proposition for the last 6 months, and now we're adding a supporting feature that's part of that story that they can tell is part of that story, that's adding trust. But if all of a sudden we're talking about something out of the blue that we've never talked about before, we're not giving any context of why it matters to them or the story, then that's going to start breaking trust. And so just using that filter to kind of just see, is this the right thing to do?
Yeah. And Michelle, what do you recommend? What practical advice are you maybe even practicing yourself, or would you give to others right now?
I mean, I do agree trust is so important. It's interesting because we see so many competitors doing like free audits. I call it a Claudit because they're basically putting a prompt in Claude to get some sort of audit out. And it's not even accurate. It's saying things about a brand. No one's even looking at it. That isn't even true. And so I say that because, again, you have to, like you said, you have to be honest. You have to like build that trust. Everyone says they can do all these things. It's hard to dig through. And so I think it comes back to also just people connecting with people. The more that you can have conversations like this, or like talk to your customer, get them on camera, get them like just chatting, like just informal conversations about like what is the reality that they're living in, and what are the words that they're using, it's been true forever, but what keeps them up at night. Like that story is so powerful still. I mean, there's things that back to QuickBooks. My husband also was an entrepreneur, and there were things that kept him up at night that he would actually message QuickBooks about. So that's also still very true. And I think the questions that you had are pretty spot on. I think one I might add would be like, what should someone do differently because this exists? Because if the answer is nothing, then like maybe it's not a launch, like maybe it's not a priority, and that's what you put in your monthly updates somewhere. Like if they're not doing anything differently, or it's truly not going to change their lives, it doesn't matter. I think the biggest thing in product marketing, kind of why I got into it, was truly, if I can get someone promoted, if someone personally, like to me personally, can come back and say this product, this tool, this tip, whatever it is, helped me do better in my job, like personally, that's what makes me happy. And I think that builds trust too. So despite all this AI, like humans matter, build trust. Last story I'll share, because I thought this one was funny, and like kind of embarrassing. My CEO, we were doing like a closed loss outreach, right? Like reach out to accounts that we've lost, that we've actually sent proposals to in the past. Just write them an email series. Sure. Was having a long day, decided to put in Claude and be like, hey, write this 3 email series for prospects that we've lost and sent proposals to. And I'm looking at the output. I was like, I didn't think about it. Send it to my CEO. He goes like, what? I'm like, I didn't totally read it. Like, that's fair. He's like, you know what? Take out your notebook, which I always have. He's like, handwrite a note that you would like write to a friend about this. Like literally write it down. Just don't look at your computer, write it down on paper. And it was so much better. It was so much more compelling. And so yes, AI is there to help us, but that human factor just like cannot be, emphasized enough. So
yeah, that's a great note to end this episode on, I think. Thank you both so very much for participating in this discussion. This is going to be a very special episode because we're on summer break right now, but this is a topic that I feel can't wait. So thank you both so much. Any kind of final comments or words or plugs?
No, thanks for having us. This is great conversation.
All right. Thank you both so much.
Bye.
Bye.